We are live here on Plus One EXP's Roll for Content channel. My name is Tony Vicenda. I'm Chief Alchemist here at Plus One EXP, which is a weird little brand that multi-classes in tabletop game design, beard and skincare alchemy, and the Bardic College of Content Creation. Our hope and desire is to help connect amazing players with amazing designers. We do that in a lot of different ways, but the most fun way is to sit down and play games with those designers. Today, we are playing Flame in the Abyss with Angela. Angela, thank you so much for coming on. So excited to sit down and play. Thank you for reaching out. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about who you are, what you do, where folks can find you online, but tell us about Flame in the Abyss.
Hello there, my lovely darlings, viewers, and anyone who happens to just take a listen to this a day or two later. Hi, I am Angela Lemus Mogrovejo, or Angela, or Angie if you know me, and are a dear friend, which I'm sure we will be by the end of the stream. I am a mix of a lot of different things. I am a freelance musician, a now full-fledged game designer, a poet, and a professional writer. I've been involved in various kinds of writing for about 4 or 5 years now. I've been present in spaces as diverse as the Art for Ourselves online publication, Rooted in Rights, Disabled Writing Fellowship, blog posts, game design on Itch and my page Voice of the Phoenix, with playbooks for Spencer Campbell's Slayers RPG and the Slayers Almanac project. I've done campaign themes for campaigns that happened over on the All Nerds Here channel, and I've been involved in various kinds of campaigns over on places like Utopia or the ongoing Tomorrow on Revelation 3 game over on Wandering Society on Tuesdays. I'm involved in a lot of different things. I have, as many folks in the larger tabletop role-playing game scene are. I wear a lot of hats and I'm involved in a lot of places. And it's only when I start saying them out loud that I start realizing how many they are. And I just remembered 2 additional ones. I am also involved in the ongoing City of Mist campaign over of New Halcyon City, being done through Creme Demented podcasts. And I'm also, if you care to hear my insights with my partner, both of us an interracial trans couple talking about relationships, love, and other things over at Queerly Yours. I'm also a podcaster, so I do a lot of things is a good way of putting it.
Awesome. Well, I'm super excited to have you here today. Tell us a little bit more about the game.
Yes, so for those of you who have not taken a look through my Twitter over at Phoenix24Frem or have heard me talking about it through my Patreon at Philosopheme, Flame in the Abyss is my first ever game I've put out. It is in many ways an ode to my mother and also an acknowledgement of the giant influence stories about grief, loss, and hope and overcoming have on my life, especially through story bits such as those told in the Dark Knight subquest for Final Fantasy XIV. That in actuality was the kind of impetus and starting point for a lot of this. But this game is very much trying to figure out how not to do trauma porn, essentially, because I've seen a lot of folks talk and write about a lot more emotional content, especially in the past few years that I've been involved in the scene. And there have been moments, even on streams I've been involved with, where I love seeing the kind of more unpleasant elements of life being hashed through or being worked out in interpersonal sort of dialogue and such. But occasionally, in the media I consume or in the way I've seen conversations go, I also get worried about how much our lives get turned into how do we best display our loss, our grief, our sadness, our pain to others in order to have validation. But I also didn't want to toss away the grief or the heaviness, the weight of those really negative emotions, because I don't think we should avoid talking about difficult things. Difficult subjects are a part of many of our lives, whether they be something as extreme as suicide or death of a family member or something like leaving a church or another body of faith. These are big losses that oftentimes as we get older, it's going to be harder and harder to avoid them. So I wanted to try and create something that would let people work through an element of grief, work through a sense of loss, but not stay there. Make it feel like this is I think I described it in one of my tweets as I wanted you to hold it in this session or whenever you play this game as like a very warm stone to like let it be there, feel the intensity of it, and then when you're done feeling it, just drop it to the side of the road and keep carrying on your path. I wanted that to sort of be the overriding element of this game. It is 3 people, a 3-person game, GM-less, mostly just a lot of back and forth dialogue between one another. It is a lot about really hashing out how you want to process a loss that's happened when you're stuck in a place where you can't seem to escape and everything feels kind of all encompassing as emotions, your memories feel kind of fuzzy. And this game is sort of an exercise in, okay, you've suffered a terrible fate, haven't you? How do we move through that?
Awesome. As odd as it might be, I'm very excited to play in that. And I was very, very excited to have the other person who's with us tonight join us to play this game, because there's somebody I feel very comfortable at the table with, and I'm always excited to sit down with. And that's Quinn. Quinn, why don't you tell people who you are, what you do, where they can find you online?
It's a hell of an act to follow. And I don't have a lot to follow it with, frankly. I'm Quinn. Hi. I make games every once in a while. Let's see. I've made Travel Not Advised. It's an isolation horror game. Initially forged in the dark, but then I made my own thing. It's over at my itch, which is 200 proof games. itch.io with the numbers. I know it's weird to see the numbers in the URL, but it works. It works every time. And when I'm not doing that, which is most of the time, I'm bartending. So, and then I'm on stream every once in a while.
Awesome.
So I'm just having a good time.
I'm glad to have you on stream with us tonight. I am, like I said, looking forward to exploring this space, and was very honored when Angel asked to share the game on stream. So we always use a couple of different tools here on the channel to explore safe. I'm going to kind of normally we would talk about those here. We actually also have always talked about them in advance, like we always do. Angel had a great checklist for us to check off. But even though this is a GM-less game, because safety and tone and other things are dealt with within the normal course of play, Angel, I'm just going to kind of hand things over to you to start walking us through how we play Flame and the Abyss.
Thank you. So a lot of how folks who play this game might be coming into the larger tabletop role-playing game space might be more used to, let's say, games that you're playing around violence, or games where you're like doing something, let's say, around like 5e kind of range, the dragon game, or you might be coming from a Numenera where it's exploration is the focus, or you might be coming from something else where it's ridiculous, like Kobolds Ate My Baby, or like I know there's a comedy variation where you play the minions of a dungeon. This is not really like that. What I want to warn folks ahead of time is that this game, as I said before, deals explicitly with loss, and that loss can bring up a lot of different topics. Those topics can include things like suicide, death, divorce, familial abuse, food anxieties, trauma. There's a lot of different things that can come up that are very rough. And if folks who do take the time to watch this and are tuning in feel like there's a moment they're like, this is too much, there is no shame, no judgment whatsoever from taking a step back or even entirely walking away from this. Your safety beats out any sort of presumed joy I might have about you enjoying this game. I hope you enjoy us going through this, but your well-being goes ahead of that. So to sort of lead us into this game so that we can sort of jump right into it, first off, I just want to quickly say thank you to all the folks who helped actually inspire this game entirely. I want to give a major shout out to Quimby Rodriguez's game Your Sisters Drowned Laertes for being a heavy influence on this game's development, to the degree that I've even called this game Haunted by Ophelia in honor of their game. This Party Sucks by Moss Bosch, who's also a fantastic trans game designer who recently got featured in a Dicebreaker article for that very same game, because they're awesome, and I have to take every opportunity to embarrass them about it. Connie Chang's Halo and Horns, and For the Queen by Alex Roberts. Both fantastic for the different mechanical elements they bring and a lot of their very different tone from this game. I just want to say thank you for that. But to bring us into the space, we start with our introduction / our premise. I think the simplest way to go about this would be I will read first, then Tony, then Quinn, then keep going that until we finish the whole of reading that page. So you are a traveler, alone and wandering through a world that does not care about you. As much as you try to push on without letting hardship weigh you down, you nevertheless struggle. And now, in the midst of your journey, you have experienced a loss whose influence will not let you be.
This loss has led you to this place, the Abyss, an area where memories become fractured and emotions take on lives of their own. No matter where you look, the world you knew before has all but faded away, eclipsed by the presence of your loss.
In order to escape the abyss, you must face your loss head-on and speak with your emotions, which have now manifested into reality.
While each will offer you a perspective on what happened before you arrived, only you can decide what will let you move on.
Only you can become the flame in the abyss, lighting the path towards your recovery and your salvation.
So I'll have us go through the how to play section as well, as it's also a very good way to keep, for the audience sake, us all sense of what's happening. So with that being the case, so Flame in the Abyss is a 3-person GMless game about memories, grief, and accepting loss. However, instead of playing 3 distinct characters, you will each be playing 3 aspects of one main character, represented by 3 different player roles. Should set aside anywhere from 2 to 3 hours of time for playtime. Tony, if you're able to keep the
I'm just looking. I was like, I've got the polished version up, not the final version. Give me just a second.
You're good. You're
Quinn,
good.
do you want to take that next paragraph?
Yeah, I can jump in. You will need at least 1 copy of this game for players to use, a 4-sided die, or D4, for starting the game, and a 6-sided die, or D6, for choosing themes and resolving indecisiveness.
I'm almost there.
I'll take the next
No,
one.
I got it. Throughout the course of play, all 3 players will take on one of 3 different emotional aspects of the main character, each with their own focus and motivation. Each aspect will have their own perspective on how the loss affected the main character. However, while the first 2 can help establish the details related to the loss, the 3rd player will always have the final say on what the main character took away from the experience.
This 3rd player does not have to ultimately be telling the truth about what happened. In fact, you should assume the main character has lost track of what actually happened. The important takeaway for the 3rd player is that this is what they choose for the main character to process from the loss in order to move on.
Play happens in 4 parts. The first to establish what the loss was, the second to develop the details concerning the loss, the third to establish how the main character comes to terms with their loss, and the fourth to help players decompress from the game.
Above all else, remember this. The story will always end in the main character leaving the abyss, making peace with their loss. How they reflect on their loss and to what degree they reflect positively or negatively will be for the table to determine.
All right. And so I will sort of breeze on by talking about these elements in the game as well. I take a lot of time in sort of writing this game to give space for things like content warnings, safety, and to stress to folks who are new, especially to this type of game, that it really is okay if you have no experience engaging in these kinds of difficult, more, I guess you could say, improv kind of style games, in the sense that you might not have ever actually thought about the kinds of things that make you uncomfortable to talk about in front of other people or at all. And there is no shame in having that. Part of what us talking ahead of time about lines and veils, and also what I encourage people to do, is to think about these as icebreakers. They are not definitive. No safety tool set, regardless of how well you try and think about how people might engage in a game, will ever cover everything. That's, to me, not the point of safety tools. The point of safety tools is to encourage us to start a dialogue and to start thinking about the kinds of topics and things that we ultimately need to get across to one another in order to be here present in the space safely. Because I'm sure plenty of people have had occasions where you're like, this person makes me very uncomfortable, but I can't get out of this situation while talking to them. That's not what you want to have in this game space. If we want to play together, let's do so in a way that helps, that's founded on a basis of trying to take care of each other as best we can, or at least not actively annoy each other. If we can't settle for the former, let's at least land on the latter. I say this both cheekily and also with great seriousness. And as always, I will recommend Tiana Shaw and Lauren Bryant Monk's TTRPG Safety Toolkit as also a very stupendous resource for looking at more safety tools than the one I cover in the book. But to continue play, we move on to character creation. This is page 8 in the book for y'all. When playing Flame in the Abyss, players will interpret the memories of the main character through one of 3 roles: the Frayed, the Mist, and the Flame.
You said page 8, and then I stopped too soon. Actually, what I've got is a different opening line. And so in the PDF I've got, page 6 is where character creation starts. And it starts similar to what you said, but then it goes in a different direction.
If it is, that's on my end. But Quinn, do you have the...
I got it. However, before doing so, you need to answer an important question together. Who is the main character you're playing?
Consider the following ways to decide whose memories you will be reflecting on during play. What name did they use around others? Was it the same one they would use in private?
Where does this person live, and how does it affect their outlook on life?
What did they do for work before they arrived in the Abyss?
How does this person feel about their gender?
How old is this character?
Only be as detailed as you need to be to establish a character, and then move on to deciding which role each of you will play.
Alrighty. And there is a... Yes, so these are things for us to sort of sort through before we pick our roles. So just decide together, this is sort of the start of play. Who is this person that we're going to be reflecting on? Do we have like an architect from Seattle who's like in their like mid-40s? Do we have like a single mom like from the South who's like maybe 25, 30 years old? Like, who is this person that we're playing that we feel comfortable thinking about their memories?
Even that is a big question.
Such a big question.
It is, but it's a good way to start it off, to ask you, like, who's this person?
Do we want to work? I think working through some of these questions would help. And it's really funny. I'm like a name last kind of person. I feel like jobs are very comfortable to pick around. Is that a good place for everyone else to start?
Yeah.
Works.
Yeah, I like it good. I was also thinking about location.
Location's very good also too. Do you have a thought on that, Quinn?
I don't know. I was kind of feeling maybe like a Midwest sort of gig, like your Ohio sort of a.
I was just in Minneapolis, and Minneapolis is way cooler than people think it is. How do we go about Minneapolis?
I was thinking about Minneapolis because of that post in the BT earlier today about Fallout. So I think we're on the same page there. Like Minnesota, like southern Minnesota.
Sure,
I like it. I've been there on one occasion and stayed with loved ones. It's much nicer. I am on the same boat of it's much nicer than people think it is. It's infinitely nicer than you think it is.
I like it cold. I think it's pretty nice.
I'm not a cold person, but I have slowly started to adopt, even though Seattle is nowhere near like any other place cold whatsoever. It's not cold. It's not. I'm like, oh, we had snow. Snow's nice. It's a novelty to me still.
People are always shocked by how warm Seattle actually is.
It is. It's much warmer than you think. So, but someone from Minneapolis, so South Minneapolis to be specific.
Right. Do we? Yeah. So, and then job. I I like the concept of them doing something with their hands, though I'm very open to what that might mean or something else entirely.
Were they like in the range of cook, creative, like glass blower, or like someone who worked in construction, or were they someone who was like a painter? What's kind of let's keep narrowing it down. So works with hands. I like that idea, but
That
which range?
my immediate thought is Potter.
Ooh,
Potter.
that's a really nice one.
That works for me.
Potter. Okay, so we have a Potter from Minneapolis.
Okay.
Do we think they've been doing this a long time? Not a long time. Does that help us kind of zone in on age?
Well, how old are we? Yeah.
I was trying to think, like, are they somebody who's fresh out of art school? Are they somebody who is established in their career?
As someone who still remembers what fresh out of an undergrad institution was, I would like to not be that person.
I was thinking,
away from baby.
What about someone who's like, because in my town, like a lot of towns have that like little like cultural center or whatever that have like different classes on random things. So it's like, what if this person is like someone who teaches pottery classes at the local like civic center?
Okay, so established enough to have been somebody that the civic center was like, yeah, you can teach a class, but also at the level where it's like you teach class at a local civic center also too.
Exactly. Like 40s.
Which is not to diminish anybody who teaches classes at local civic centers. I have been that person. Just a statement for anyone watching.
Tony is dragging himself as much as he's dragging anyone else by accident.
There's a level of professional that you are at going up or coming down when you are teaching classes at a local civic center. Or you're just really passionate about what you do and enriching your local community. All those things are great. Do we feel like maybe like a late 30s, early 40s?
Yeah, I think that's somewhere. I'd lean towards like early 40s. Like someone who's like first third of their life is like done, is like now moving into like another like mid section of their life.
But at the point where you actually feel like your life is over, even though you still have so much of it in front of you.
Yes, exactly. I am not even yet 30 yet, and I'm having a thought of like, but I'm meeting that point with grace and happiness. I'm like, wait, the first section of my life's over? Yes. First part sucked. Round 1 was terrible.
I hope I'm going to be able to meet it with that much grace. We'll see.
It's fine. After that, you're just old. It's great. So
I want that. I want that thought. I want to be at that place of, you're just old at that point. Or everyone considers you old.
As part of my prep to go to Minneapolis, was talking to Aaron King, who lives in Minneapolis, so I got to see while I was there, who was also talking about Fallout and the Brain Trust. Was told when they moved there, you're not cool until you're 30 in Minneapolis, to which we added, you're not hot until you're 40 in Minneapolis. And so, which is a 39-year-old makes me a Minneapolis 9. And so,
so early 40s, Potter works at like a civic center, teaches.
Over 40 in Minneapolis, so they're hot.
They're hot.
They're
Minneapolis hot.
I don't make the rules. Aaron King makes the rules.
I think that may have been Sarah Frank, but
okay.
Damn it.
What?
Well, I have the question of how they feel about their gender, but also like I'll pose another question around that. Were they someone particularly reclusive, or were they kind of like the magnet of every space they move through? Let's imagine this is a world that does not have the panini going on, and you can be around people freely and without judgment and without fear of everything. That's me. What were they particularly social kind of person? Were they reclusive? And related to that, relationships were they particularly romantic kind of person? And if so, who were they with?
I guess hearing that question, like, for me, it seems like it would be easier to play this game if they didn't have any romantic connections, which makes me go, no, they were very social, or at least they were medium social. Like I want to see what that does in the game.
Yeah,
Okay.
I don't think you teach a class at a civic center unless you are at least moderately social. And I don't think we have to play them as like super social, or maybe they're not even necessarily commanding. But I do like the concept that they like and enjoy being around people and feel comfortable commanding a classroom and instructing others about what they're doing well or what they're doing poorly, which I think has a level of put yourself out there.
So maybe charismatic, but not necessarily like belle of the ball kind of level.
I think that's good.
More like good. They have a good presence. They're the kind of person who draws folks in, but they're not or knows how to like diffuse a situation or manage it, like you said, manage a room of people, Tony. But no one who's like not the mega. We're not at level of like would carry a megaphone around at like a pep rally kind of energy. Not that.
I think they're simply a pleasant sort.
Yeah, that's yeah. By the way, chat, as we're talking, if you have ideas, feel free to type them in. We may ignore you, but we may not also too. So, you know, just,
gamble a stamp.
That's right. Yeah. So I like that. And then we talked about romantic. I do like the idea of them having other significant people in their life because of that. Being 40 and single for a lot of people can be a big thing. For other people, it's a very much not. There's a lot of weird, interesting societal expectations that come with that. But like, I agree with Quinn that I want them to have important people in their lives, whether they're romantic or whether.
What about like romance-wise? What about like in early stages romantic relationship?
I like that.
Could be like like someone who's relatively just new, or it could be someone who maybe like they took a break from like being involved with like dating and were like, I kind of just want to be like, maybe that was part of what helped them establish the whole pottery like teaching element. They were like, okay, late 20s, early 30s were a mess. I'm gonna take some years for myself and work on being more involved in this space. And now with them maybe reaching a new arc of their life, like just reaching the start of a new arc, they're like, I'll give this a shot because I think I'm much more of me. I'm much more the me who I want to be right now.
I do have this has given me a cute idea. What if this burgeoning relationship is like somebody else who teaches a different class at the Civic Center and they just like kept bumping into each other? Now I'm kind of in like a romance mindset, which isn't what the game is about. But I'm just like, but painting professor, painting teacher, pottery teacher. Oh, so cute.
I mean, I do love the concept of maybe this is somebody they knew from art school, and maybe they were involved then. Life took them separate ways, and now has brought them back together, and they're unsure as far as what exactly that looks like.
I didn't write this game for the situation to turn it into a rom-com generator. That was not the intent of this game.
I don't know that this is going to be like necessarily the biggest aspect of it. I feel like
I think we're enjoying.
We're turning this into a cozy slice
of
life, dealing with lots of memories game. But I do like the idea of there being somebody who they have a long-standing romantic relationship with, who they have reconnected with. I think through the Civic Center, like as another artist, is great. And I like the idea that maybe it's like it's uncertain whether that is like, hey, they broke up, or whether that's, hey, we don't know if we're getting back together. I like just
depending on what the loss turns out to be.
Right. So
that could very well be what the loss is.
Right. Yeah.
Chekhov's boyfriend.
Do we have any thoughts on or feelings on gender?
I mean, I have thoughts about gender and such almost like every day, but nothing particular.
All the time, Tony.
For the character,
I'm okay leaving that one more up in the air, ambiguous as well. The same level that we're leaving kind of the romance is like this was a starting thing, but we don't know what go past that. We don't know elements because it's also fun to leave certain elements like up in the air because as I try and stress in the writing too, only be as detailed as we feel like necessary to make someone we feel comfortable playing, which we have a pretty detailed person of a Potter 40s Civic Center, works at a Civic Center, and newly started, probably took some time off of being involved with people like more romantically, and is now kind of coming back into this situation with someone from their past, maybe. And not reclusive, but also not necessarily trying to be the center of attention, just someone who is a pleasant sort, as Quinn.
A pleasant sort.
A pleasant sort. Does anyone want to take a stab at a name?
This is your chance, chat. We've described this person
True.
to you. You could tell us.
Actually, I'm not going to say shit until we have something from chat. Actually,
we demand it. Unless
demand
it's really,
a name.
Unless it's really bad.
If you don't come up with a name, we are turning this van around.
Love is blue because you just hit follow. I know you're there. Which Love is blue did come through. Before I threatened them.
You already did.
Or put them on blast. The two names, the first one is Quentin. The second one is Anders. I like both of those. I think I like Quentin a little bit better, though.
Just because I'm named Quinn.
We can,
like Quentin. Like
we can X that for that very reason, I think.
As much as I do love the name.
Let's. How does everybody feel about Anders?
I like Anders. It feels like... It feels like the kind of name that, like, growing up, someone had been like, "You have such a pretentious, like, name, man." I'm like my mom just liked to read old British mystery novels. What do you want from me? I just wanted. She liked the name. What do you want from me?
Anders is good. Who came up with that name?
That was Love is Blue 3. Thank you so much.
5 points.
Well,
5
being
points
put on blast. We shall also thank you.
All right, so we've got Anders.
Okay, so we have a name. We have a lot of details. Do we feel like this character is in a good state to carry on?
Yeah, totally.
Okay, so the next sort of 3 pages for the book directly, but also things to consider are like which of the roles folks would want to play. Now, we have talked ahead of time about which roles each of us would want to do. I believe we settled on myself as the Frayed, correct? And then Tony would be... Tony is Frayed. I am the Mist, and then Quinn is going to be the Flame. So I believe if Tony has the capacity to bring up... If you have the capacity to bring up the image about it, the Frayed, you can...
As soon as I move it around, there we go. All right.
Yeah.
It needed its own little intro ditty to go along with it.
I am playing as the Frayed, a manifestation of the main character's frustration, anger, and pragmatism. Think of this role as rooted in pessimism, looking back on events with a sense of longing for what could have been otherwise. When playing this role, remember to look back on memories with a focus on how they directly affected the main character for the worse. While this can involve anger, sadness, or any other negative emotions, your motivation should always be more self-oriented. This does not mean dwelling on the trauma of what the character remembers, but instead recognizing what was draining about the experience. The Frayed will always begin each round by establishing what about the current round's theme resonated with the main character first.
So yeah, that is the Frayed. That is who Tony will be playing. I will be playing the Mist, who is in a way the emotional polar opposite to that. The Mist is instead a manifestation of the main character's optimism, joy, and willingness to care about others. You want to think of this role as rooted in idealism, looking back on events with rose-tinted glasses with a penchant for self-sacrifice. When playing this role, remember to look back on memories with a focus on how they involved other people bringing happiness to the main character. Aim for the more positive elements of memories, and move attention away from aspects that involve sacrifice on the part of the main character. Remember, this is critical. You represent the main character's hopefulness left unchecked by reality and self-preservation. The mist will always follow the frayed in establishing what about the current round's theme resonated with the main character, and build off whatever stood out to you from what the frayed has said, and add on details as you see fit. So you are, in a way, you are the flip side to what the frayed thinks about. If the frayed wants to imagine, like, ouch, this sucked, the mist is kind of thinking about, it wasn't so bad, it was nice, it was good. And then you have the final role, which is the flame, which is the other portion to this.
All right, the flame. A manifestation of the main character's desire to persevere in spite of adversity. Think of this role as the synthesis of all the main character's emotions, considering all other perspectives, but ultimately deciding what they need most to carry on. If the frayed represents grief left unresolved, and the mist represents self-denial, the flame represents the mediator between these two emotional poles. While the main character may never fully get over the strain brought on by the loss, you are never required to leave the main character in a state of misery. You symbolize what carried on in spite of everything, looking back on events with an eye for what the main character needed to heal. The flame will always roll to determine what loss the main character experienced and what theme will be dealt with each round. They will always be last to reflect on how the theme resonates with the main character. While you will always go last, you alone determine what details from the main character's memories remain true for the rest of the game.
And thus we have our roles. Each of us have picked out which we're going to do, and thus we move on to playing the game, which I'll read, and then we'll jump into how this whole game starts. It's a decent amount of setup, but this is all to give us a sense of how to feel comfortable playing with one another, and also feel comfortable having a character that we all agree is someone we want to think about as we move forward. So playing the game is, each game of Flame in the Abyss is done in 4 parts with a total of 4 rounds. You start with the spark, continue on with the kindling and the embers, and you end with scattering the ashes. So that is the whole process of playing the game. And so we move into the first part, officially jumping into it, of the spark. Whichever player has chosen to take on the role of the flame will start the game by determining what will be the loss the main character has recently experienced. To do this, the flame will roll a d4, and the result will determine which of the following topics will act as the loss the table reflects on for this session. So, with Quinn being the flame, so with that being the case, roll the d4, and this will determine what our loss will be.
Cutting out family members or close friends from your life.
Oof. That is going to be a big one. After determining what the main character's loss was, the flame will then determine what will be the first theme the table will address in round 1. The flame will then roll a d6, and the result will determine what will be the focus for reflection. So on this one, roll a d6, and this will determine what the first theme we deal with is.
Food. What special memories of food do they associate with the loss?
Whatever theme the flame rolls, treat the accompanying question as a starting point for conversation. And so this one I will not read the direct from the text, but give a rough sense that play goes as the phrase starts, reflects on the loss, gives us a starting point in answering the question related to the theme. So we have food. We have questions related to what memories of food do they associate with the loss. The frayed will start off, do their reflection, and then once the frayed has reached a point where they're comfortable and done doing their sense of reflection on it, then it will go to the mist. The mist will take their time, build off of what the frayed has said, and can have a very different perspective. Some of the details might be changed, and the two of you kind of do it back and forth until you both decide you've both added enough, or the flame decides, I think I have enough to what I want to build off of that, and the flame will ultimately take their time to reflect on what happens from there. Now, this is what I'll stress to the flame. You don't have to take our details as they are. So, for
Right.
example, if I say a church, I could was the scene of one of these things. You could very well say it wasn't a church; it was a theme park, or you could say it was a family potluck. Actually, it was a business get together with folks from the office. Like that might be an example. You just treat what we give you as starting points to build off of, the way that we're sort of building off of each other as we're going through this. And your focus, the key difference between all of them is that one, each of us has a different way we're looking at the events. And also the flame ultimately will decide at the end what is true. And us as the frayed and the mist will accept that that's the element of what those are going to be the true pieces we then keep going off of for the rest of the themes for the rest of the rounds. But that is effectively the whole course of how the game works. So here we go. We start with food. What special memories of food do they associate with the loss of cutting out family members or close friends from your life?
Before we do that, we've got a little thing we're going to do to transition us into a mode of play for our audience. Angela, do you want to? There's some music that is going to come with this game. We want to provide everybody a chance to hear that as kind of a beat from us doing the setup mode of this and entering into the space of play. So I'm going to play that for everybody in just 1 second. Do you have anything you want to say about the music before I do that?
Yes. So this game is going to be sold on a tiered basis, which would be the first one is just the plain text, access to the plain text document. Then the second tier will be a mobile and a more like condensed kind of version. That's I believe is sort of more akin to kind of like was it a zine kind of quality sort of level. And then the final one would be the full color copy that we are currently reading from. You're seeing images from, and also access to an original piece of music that this game that I wrote specifically for this game. I recorded it. I edited it, and all of the music and such, it comes from me just tinkering around with the themes inspired by this game. So this is a piece called Pyre.
If I've set everything up right.
Ready when you are, Tony.
Dang it, that was good. Hold on, I gotta restart. Because I was muted. I forgot to unmute myself after the song. I remember the last apartment Thanksgiving party. And like any Thanksgiving party for any apartment, it's a mix of the food everybody wanted to bring from home, whatever their Thanksgiving favorite was, along with the little bit that the budget had set aside for, the turkey and the main dishes. And, it was also my last department party before sabbatical. And I don't know what I expected, but something more than mushy green beans and overcooked turkey. And I don't know what the red and white stuff was, but I don't even want to try to think about it. And even right now, like the smell of overly sweet yams mushing with cleaning chemicals as the janitorial department was already coming through for the holiday break and starting to set stuff aside, mingle together in my mind and make me want to puke. Like I said, I don't know what I expected, but something more, some type of fanfare, a mention of the fact that I was taking time to work on my art, a celebration of some sort, like a pie, store-bought or homemade, that I could eat, right? Something that took the fact that I can't eat gluten into account on the dessert table, period. Any of those things would have been appreciated, but even if that couldn't happen, we'll see you soon, people asking about my plans, or just the ability to even say thank you if no one was going to say anything to me, would have been nice.
I feel like there's a huge element, though, that people were there. They were trying to say the things that we wish they would have said more outright and out loud, but they were trying to say those things. I mean, we knew Jeanette, who was often working with helping folks with remedial English, and also Daniel who was working with stuff for like GED sort of related work. Like, they're both coming down on hard times, and that we've been supporting them. We've been there for them for a lot of different things, and we knew that the amount of energy they were going to have on any given day was going to be pretty minimal. They knew what we were dealing with. They've been there for times before. And they've always appreciated us in those very private, quiet moments. Did we really need like a big fanfare in this kind of place? Yeah, we may have given a good part of the past few years of our life to this place, but a community is always much bigger than just one person. And maybe we felt like our standards for what we were expecting from other people to reflect back at us are too high. It's not a bad thing to want a lot out of people, but it's also okay to acknowledge that people do also have limited energy. They have limited time to be there for us. They have limited space to manage that.
I mean, but we had been there for them. And again, like, I don't know, in a list of John's listing of all of the accomplishments of the different departments, a mention, right? A card that people signed wrong, even happy birthday, because they didn't pay attention to it, would have meant more than the support in the quiet moments, which, yeah, I mean, they've been there, but I mean, like every other time someone's gone on sabbatical, like, we've made sure that there was something to happen. And I guess I just assumed, I don't know, like everybody's already getting together. Like, no one had to throw a party, that there would be something.
Yeah, but how much of this place did we really want to like stay enmeshed with at this moment? We're, in a lot of ways, we're also leaving this place for our own well-being. We know they're going to be here still after this point in time. We know that they're going to be teaching folks here. We know that they're going to be always present, as much as we didn't want them maybe to be anymore. So maybe leaving this place is a good is a good thing for us. It gets us away from that constant stress. It gets us away from that anxiety. And also, like, it's not like these people disappear entirely when we leave. They don't just stop existing once we leave the center. It's like, oh no, there goes 12 people who we could have chatted with. We can always like call them back or check in with them.
If this department and the people in it was the kind of place and the kind of people that were going to throw a party for us, or we're going to get the pie, or we're going to make the card, we wouldn't be going on a sabbatical in the first place. It's not a sabbatical. Let's call it what it is. We are quitting. What are the chances of us coming back to this department? You're kidding me. We have a couple of dear friends who have been there for us, and we're there for them as much as they have the energy, as much as we have the energy. And I have no doubt we're going to stay in contact with them. We'll get lunch. We'll talk. We'll keep in touch. But I'm sad. I'm sad that, because when we started here, it seemed like, I don't know, a place to stay, a place that maybe we could reach our potential, and then it wasn't. We didn't have the support, for a lot of reasons. It wasn't what we wanted it to be, and so now we're going, hopefully, to somewhere that is what we want it to be. And I don't, good, bad, whatever, but we were having kind of a bad time, We were kind of having a pretty bad time. So I think we should, it's the right call. I don't know, it's the only call that gets us going. Been stuck here for a minute, don't you think?
Take a second to digest that one. God, I've had that thought in previous jobs I've had way more times than I'd like to admit.
Tasty.
It's not the word I would have associated.
I just love this kind of game. I love getting like elbow deep in bad feelings. It's my favorite.
Tony, because it is ultimately up to the group, with the flame having like the biggest voice in it, to decide when we want to move on to the next round. But is there other things that you want to introduce for this round around food and other memories to build off of?
No, that was great.
Okay. There's nothing else that I think the Mist has either. The Mist is just sort of, I think, is still looking at this like, it's going to be fine. Like, these people aren't gone. This place wasn't that bad, really. There's almost, I may have to consider this for a slight edit to the book. There's almost like a very gaslighty element to the book.
I think that's true to life, though, personally.
Yeah. I think a lot of times what we miss about gaslighting is gaslighting happens in both directions, right? So like, and I love this about it. We can talk more about this after even is playing,
right?
But like, we convince ourselves that things are worse than they are, and we convince ourselves that things are better than they are, and we let other people do the same things in both directions. And I think what we experience culturally is pressure to just be okay in a lot of spaces, but I also think even in online spaces, we're oftentimes encouraged to unleash the worst of ourselves also too. And so,
it reminds me of that thing where it's like, what is it? every time you recall a memory, you're not recalling the instant, you're recalling the last time you recalled it.
Correct. Yeah.
And so, yeah.
Ouch.
Yeah. So I think in terms, I like the structure of this for the inconsistency. I think that's an important aspect. We can move on now.
Yeah. Okay, so we move on to rounds 2 and 3, which are founded in the section called the kindling. So for the kindling, rounds 2 and 3 Flame in the Abyss work in much the same way they did in the Spark. However, there are slight differences in determining what themes will be the focus for each round. When the Flame rolls to find out the theme for round 2, they will roll a d6 in the same way they rolled on the Spark. However, the results will now be the following. An odd number will be the first remaining theme, an even number will be second remaining theme. And after the theme for round 2 is determined, continue play as before in the same order as round 1. Start with the Frayed, then the Mist, and end with the Flame. And when round 3 begins, the table will work with the remaining theme left from the list you began with in round 1. And if the table wishes to, they can also decide amongst themselves which of the 2 remaining themes to reflect upon next. If you choose to do this, the Flame should retain the final say on deciding which theme to address next. Regardless of how you choose themes for the kindling, continue play as you did in rounds 2 and 3, and then proceed to the final round, the Embers. So it comes down to our Flame to roll a d6, and that will determine what the next theme we address is for round 2.
Even. Second remaining theme is location. Where did the loss happen, and what are some areas of importance related to it?
Cool. God, the bell was so loud every time it went off. Like, why they put this place in an old modified high school? Like, I know that it was more affordable. It was adjacent to the campus, but like, it was like the reason college classes don't run on the same schedule is because there's no reason to, and why they never learned how to turn it off, I don't know. But it was a constant reminder of feeling stuck in between. And I feel like every time I went to the office, right? Like John's, the department head's office, old principal's office, to say, can we just figure out, like, can we pull the plug? Like, I understand there's a level of antiquity here. I understand there's a level of like touching our roots. I understand, like, can we just turn it off? It's such a distraction in the middle of instruction, in the middle of reflection, and something that should have had no cost associated we couldn't do, let alone the things that we actually needed to work on and replace in the building. I remember constantly talking with Janet about it back when we talked, of just like, you know, like trying to make the budget work for both of us, right? Trying to go back and forth around how we could share and pool resources, about how we could buy things in common to use for the entire wing. And it didn't seem to matter how much we stretched it. There was never enough to make it through. I remember one time, like, the heater was broken in the middle of winter. And when we asked what to do, the answer was just to turn on the kiln and let that heat up the entire building. Let alone the fact that, like, there's a life to a kiln, and by doing that, we're short circuiting how long it's going to be able to fire, which is a cost, but also the fact that it gets up to over 500 degrees. And so that means I'm teaching in a classroom that's next to a room with a 500 degree plus oven roasting in it. Meanwhile, at the other end of the building, Daniel is still completely ice cold. And so what is the solution? To go out into the hallways to try to make things work, to try to find that perfect space of equilibrium, right? And in the summer, right? In the summer, if you were teaching summer classes, the entire place smelled and stank from the woods nearby. I don't know if things were like dying out there, or if it was just old rot, or what was happening. And still at the same time, like, I miss it. Because at least other than John, right? At that point, we were in it together. And even though now I don't have to worry about any of that stuff, right? I've got a stable budget. I'm teaching classes. The building is properly heated. The smells are fine.
Ish.
It's, I mean, there's, Tuesdays after the men's rec basketball league, not great. I was not alone.
Honestly, I think that's the element that we're really downplaying in all of this, is that, yeah, there was a bunch of crappy things about the building itself, but the building was never really the thing that mattered that much to us. Like, think about all the folks we met at, like, let's say happy hours, or like at other moments where we're like, does this is not working over there for you? No, it's not working over there for me either. Just, there's a lot of those moments that wouldn't have happened from if we didn't have the chance to just gripe with a bunch of other people who are like, you know what, today was terrible, or like sometimes folks don't want to work with us or learn what we're trying to teach them. And after a certain moment, a certain bit of time, it's just like, that's not the biggest concern we have. The bigger concerns we have are just getting to be there with these other people who understand that, who, like, I'll put it very bluntly, they're not like 20 somethings. They're not folks who feel like just so removed from the way that I want to think about my life for the next few years. They feel so much more like, we're here, we have gripes, we have bills to pay, we have a bunch of these things. And yeah, sure, some folks who are younger might have that, but it's not the same level of experience we've had moving through life. It's not the same kind of gripes with how shitty some of the education system as a whole is. Those gripes that were weighing on us, yeah, they're heavy sometimes, but the things that made it a lot lighter and a lot easier were also the people who were there with us throughout that whole time.
Right.
There were people who loved us.
But where are they now? Like I sent Janet, Daniel, and Tom an email last week just saying, like, hey, like, love to swing by the next happy hour, right? Like, I'd buy the first round, right? And no response, right? Like, I mean, I got Tom's out of office, right? Like, I mean, I guess that's a reply, but and good for him. Like, first kid, that's great. Must be nice to have, someone you go home to every day. But I mean, like, like, no response. And here, like, I mean, we've got 80-year-old Mrs. Davis who teaches the swim class, right? The geriatric aerobics class. We've got Mr. Smith, who works at the front desk, right? He's perfectly pleasant. Not a great conversationalist, but also neither one of whom I want to go out with, or that I have anything in common with. I think they are both in bed by 6 p.m. and I go home and watch TV, stare at the clock, like, and again, like, the students coming in, I've got my choice of like, the preteen, pottery wheel class. Mostly they're still all on coil pots. They haven't even hit wheel readiness yet. I've got the moms who come through who, I mean, there are nice people in there. There's pleasant conversations. They're at least my age, but their lives are completely different than mine. Like who of all these students, like, would I even experience some sort of connection with? Like, the thing about Daniel and Janet and Tom and even John, right? We had a lot in common. Like, we loved the arts, we loved literature, we loved talking, and we all had that place in common. And I don't want to go back there, but I don't want to be alone either.
Look, I hear you. Or did you have something you wanted to do there, Angela?
The only thing I was going to add was we chose to take responsibility for being alone. There's wanting to be sad about not being around people, but we don't have control over them. We have control over us, and we made the choice. We made the decision years ago that we were going to make our lives be what we wanted it to be. And that's always going to come with some risks. To be happy requires us sometimes to have to go through some periods that aren't great. They're not going to be the things that are fantastic and enjoyable and have constantly be able to call on folks who are super excited to be there with us. Sometimes it means being alone, and that's hard, but that also means that other people don't have to deal with us when we're just wanting space to be filled up and not actually wanting people there to be with us.
Yeah, there's a lot to miss, but like you're talking about the building, talking about, we had people, but what I think you guys are both missing is that those are both just like the two halves of life, is places and people. And I think you're missing what happens when you combine the two, which is the college consumed us for years. What did we do? Right? We woke up in the morning, we did lesson plans, we went to school, we taught, and then after work, happy hour with people that we already worked with, that we already saw all day. And then we go home, we go to sleep, we wake up, we do the same shit. We didn't, like, obviously not that getting out is a fucking priority for us. It never has been, never will be, but everything that we had was on campus. Everything that mattered to us professionally and personally was on campus, in our office, in our classroom, in the building. And if anything about the life that we were living then was unhealthy, it has to be that. We had no balance at all. We didn't really have much for ourselves at all. Like, yeah, do I miss our office? Sure, it was a nice office. It'd be cool if we had an office now. But I think, talking about sacrifice, talking about taking risks, I don't think that living that way was sustainable. And, is our work now less fulfilling or less, I don't know, whole in a way? Yeah, I'll agree with that. I will agree. Like, there is something that I feel we have lost by moving to where we are, but we have way more time outside of work. We have time with ourselves. Do we have time for our work friends that we kind of like? No, and we don't have as many people at the Civic Center who we get along with, and that's okay too, because if there were too many people there that we got along with, we'd have just done a palette swap. It would be the same shit all over again, just with less bureaucracy. I think the strength of the change we've made is that we have less from our job, from our work. I think that's the good part, is that we have less, and then we can fill up the rest with whatever we want to fill it up with. And granted, it's been hard to figure out what to fill that up with, but I'd still rather have the option.
How's everybody doing?
I'm having a ball over here.
I wrote this game with the intention to have this. My focus was like on heavy like moments of loss, specifically about like family and such. I'm having a lot of like point in my life thoughts of like what am I doing or where am I at kind of things. I'm like, there's a lot of loss in this too that I hadn't thought about, and a lot of like letting go of stuff that is. Oh my lord!
I'll externally process with you all a little bit about recent experiences in my life at the end, because
I'm pulling
there's
from
some
real life
things
too.
fueling, yeah, and so
Yeah.
Okay, that's round 2. Round 3, which the theme will be memento. What is an item of significance that brings the loss to mind?
I remember my first staff showcase so clearly. It was first year teaching, barely older than the students. I felt the need to prove myself. And so I remember like how many times I re-threw that piece of clay, like that I crumpled it up and or dried it out because I had let it spin for too long. Or the one time where I walked out into the hallway and got caught in a conversation with a student and then forgot about it and came back and it had just completely dried out overnight. And it was as close as I had gotten to what I really wanted. And I had to drop it all in the wet pot and grab a fresh hunk and slam it down and start all over again. And like I could have gone simple, right? I could have gone with a minimalist little bowl, and it could have just been a representation of new beginnings or some bullshit like that. But like I wanted something elegant. I wanted a little bit of attention. And I fucking got it. Like I remember standing there and I remember students coming by and marveling. I remember the write-up that the local paper did with a picture of me on the front. That was the night I met Daniel for the first time. 2 years into teaching, I thought he knew so much. And I just remember how much over the course of the next few years that got drained out of me. Like I still, like the pot's still up in my classroom because it's one of the last times I feel like I created anything that mattered or anybody took note of. After that, it was just the churn season after season after season of the curriculum. And no one other, even the next few showcases, like I didn't have time or energy to put that kind of thing into it. And I got no notice. It was just another pot, another sculpture. You know, I mean, my 4th year, like I was really proud of that piece, actually. No one even mentioned it. And it seemed after that, like, why even try? Like, and so I put energy into the other staff, just thinking like maybe if I reached out that they would respond, right? And that it would matter, and that it would form relationships that were deeper. And relationships I thought that would carry all of us professionally, that even as we moved on and grew and changed and took sabbaticals or quit and went on to bigger and better things, that we would still support each other's work and each other's lives. And I guess whenever I look at this pod, I just remember how much I worked on it, how hard it was to get it done, but the reward of that, the attention and even the relationships that grew out of that. And I feel like all the rest of the work I did after that point was just worthless. Like, no new connections. And I was putting work into other people, and none of it's being returned. Like, none of it's returned. And like, every day I come home and I see it. And it's the best thing I've made in a decade. And it makes me just not want to even sit at a wheel or pick up a new slab, because it all just kind of seems worthless.
Why did we start this? Were we looking for glory? Were we looking for attention? We didn't start all of this to do that. Yeah, we wanted to make a living off of some of this stuff, preferably not having money to afford basic things is kind of a nice thing to have, but that wasn't why we were trying to do all of this. We weren't making this, we weren't teaching at this place for acclaim. We weren't teaching at this place because we hoped like to get noticed by some upstanding thing. This community center, we were doing this for people who were looking for something else, for people who wanted to learn, and we had the means to show them. We had the means to show them that, look, this thing that feels like we've never reached it, that already feels like a case for a whole bunch of other people. The small stuff we make that we don't feel like is always like anywhere near the standards we have in our own head, that we don't want to get out of, we just don't want to acknowledge are just in our own head and are always the enemy of anything else that we're doing. All these other people think of the things that we look at we make every other week and are like, I don't think I could ever make that. And then years later, how many students have we had who look at the stuff that we think is terrible, like, or the stuff that we think, oh no, that didn't really, like, it didn't turn out, I had this mistake. How many of them look at that and think, I could do that someday? We've been there. We've been that inspiration. We've been that person. Is that insignificant when compared to just having a newspaper notice us, having to ourselves like we didn't meet an arbitrary standard we set in our own head to try and be better than that person we know we're not going to be again, and it's okay if we're not them again? What about all the people who've seen us do this?
It's not about, but that's it. It's not about like, yeah, we chose to be more alone. I mean, like, I think that's the kindest interpretation of what we could say. Like, we chose to step back from some things, but I didn't choose to be unseen. Like, I didn't choose to be like, it's not like write up in a local paper isn't about like, it's not about the accolade, right? Like the people who are going to see it. Like, it's about knowing that other humans look at me and see me and realize that I exist when I walk away from them. And I don't think that we matter to anybody in that way. I think we're the person who comes by and like is at their work or gives them a note, and that they can take and take and take from. And then as soon as we're out of their line of sight, we're gone. And nobody at the school calls. Past students don't even write anymore because they're all busy. I get it. I know they've got stuff going on. And here we're just a resource provider. Like, they want to learn a little bit about sculpting, and we're going to teach them a little bit about sculpting. And I guess I just want someone to look over and see me, and for the next 4 hours possibly remember that I exist.
Angela, do you have anything?
Okay. Go ahead. I can tell you have a raring to go look on your face. Do it.
There's trying to order it all. There's a few pieces to this, right? Which is, we didn't get into pottery to be a teacher. We got into teaching so that we could keep doing pottery, right? So there is that. Like, if some like jerk off angel investor had come in and be like, I'll give you $1 million and you can make all the pots you want, of course you would have fucking gone for that. It would have been cool. It would have been cool to have someone go, hey, your work is cool enough that it can be your life. But that didn't happen, and it happens for almost nobody. And like, honestly, fine, whatever, who cares? But in our American heart, it stings. It always stings when you're not the star. And but right, so there's that, which is super true. Which is super, super true. But about relationships, about people thinking about us when we leave their line of sight, when was the last time we tried to have a relationship with anybody that didn't know us because of what we do? That didn't know us because of pottery? When was the last time that happened? When did we interact with anybody in a way that didn't start off with, I'm your teacher, or I'm your coworker? Pottery is my thing. Look at this pot. I made this pot. That's what I do. I'm pot guy. I don't remember. College? Like when we were going to college, not even teaching at college. In college, maybe. Our whole professional lives, our whole life has been professional. Even since coming to the Civic Center, we're still falling into the trap of seeing ourselves as our work first, of looking at that pot and going, well, that's me up there. Why isn't anybody looking at that? That's, there's a whole metaphor in that one. That's wow. Oh wow. So there's this whole narrative, live your art, be your art. And for some deeply troubled people, that way of life works and is successful, arguably, in some senses. But I don't think it's ever worked for us. And frankly, I think we've been duped. I think we were fucking duped. And we just need to let go of this being the most important thing about us, the most valuable thing that we can possibly do. the most valuable thing about us is that we're alive, right? That's the important thing. We're alive, and we're here, and by God, we can speak to people, and we can make eye contact. The pot thing is great, and creating is wonderful, but it's, you know, like, it doesn't really matter. Like it does matter, but, and it can matter, and it should matter, but just let's just dial it back, man. You know, I want to be able to make the damn pot, and or teach someone else to make it, and not worry if they think about me afterward, because the important thing is now they know how to make their own damn pot. They don't have to think about me later, because they're just a student. What does it matter to me? Let's I don't know, maybe take somebody else's class of something at the Civic Center. Let's make some kind of a friend, and not even tell them we do pottery until we've gone out for drinks like 3 times. They're like, what do you do for work? And I'm like, oh, I teach at the Civic Center. And we just stay cagey as fuck. We don't tell them shit. We don't show them pictures, nothing. Just us. Just us. Why should the music we listen to be less important than the pottery we make? Why should the books we read be fifth down the line from the pottery? I just think we got this whole thing out of order.
I'm going to have a lot to think about after that whole thread. And it's also sad that the first thought that came to mind for every person who meets us thereafter, we've decided that has free right to go, all right, keep your secrets. Like, it's just, that's them to us if we decide this from here on out. That's them. Which is amazing. But if we want that as a good spot to end round 3, we can move into the final round, which is the Embers. For the final round, each role will have the opportunity to reflect on the final theme as it relates to the loss experienced by the main character. However, in doing so, each role should focus on how the theme contributes to the main character's escape from the abyss. The final theme will be the following: Memorial. How does the main character memorialize the loss? Do they have any rituals or hobbies related to it? And I think it's appropriate each of us reads our section and the question that follows from it. So for the Frayed.
Say it for me one more time.
So I think it's appropriate. No worries, Cody, you're juggling a lot. I think it's appropriate for this round 4, for the final round. Each of us reading our section and the question that follows thereafter it. So after Memorial, which is how does the main character memorialize the loss? Do they have any rituals or hobbies related to it? The Frayed reads their section and the question. The Mist reads their section and the question, and then the Flame reads their section, the question, and the last bit.
Cool.
So for the Frayed.
Sorry, I'm trying to get down to that.
No worries.
Section. This is under Memorial, right?
Yes, under Memorial.
How does the main character memorialize the lost? Do they have rituals or hobbies related to it? For the Frayed, touch upon how the theme relates to the strain the main character has gone through with all they and the table have processed thus far. Try and answer the following questions. What does / did the main character need relief from?
And then for the mist, keep your reflection focused on what the main character may have tried to find escape from. Aim to answer the following question. What does/did the main character try to escape from?
For the flame, take stock of all the frayed and the mist have said and use it to help answer your final question. How do you make peace with your loss?
Once the flame discusses their answer at the table and answers the question, proceed to the final section, scattering the ashes. So, once again, we begin with the frayed. So, what did the main character need relief from, and how did they memorialize this loss?
I know that it seems like I'm caught on being seen, but in a way, it's largely because I've never learned how to just be. Like, as an artist, as a creator, it feels like I'm only as good as a teacher, right? As the last crop or work or class that I poured into. I'm always like doing. And I'm constantly in the churn. And I think my hope was that stepping out of the school and into this, I would have the space to do work. And I think I'm just afraid of doing that alone. Like, if no one sees my work, do I exist? And if I exist, is that enough?
I think the other part of it that's been hard is that it's in some ways it's been easier, as much as I didn't want to admit this part of it either. That, yeah, of course other people are thinking about me as much as but there's just not in the way that I might like it, but I don't have control over them. Like, of course they remember me, of course that. And a lot of this is my responsibility for what I decided to do, even if some people didn't decide to see me or acknowledge my work maybe in the way I wanted. But I think some of the hardest part is twofold. It's one, like you said, I have to do this for myself. I'm responsible for that. But I think sometimes getting to this point, it's been hard to also acknowledge too, after so long, about feeling kind of stuck, of that worry of being, at least if you're stuck in something, you're secure. You may be trapped. You may be like, if you're trapped, like you get stuck in like a whole mound of mud and you can't move out of it. It's like, well, I can't get out of here, but at least no one can come after me, or I can't get fucked up or fucked over by anyone else going somewhere else after that point. But the moment you get out of that, the moment you have to figure out like that you have to be enough for yourself, that's a whole mound of chaos that is maybe sometimes too much. And I think this, funnily enough, this may or may not have been a crime, but no one will know about it, so it doesn't matter. I kind of imagine that one of these days when we were going by, when we were leaving the Civic Center, that we actually found at one point with the way that the bell was ringing, I think there's this tiny little chip of it that broke off, not like sharp or anything like that, but we decided to keep it with us because that's a sign that like we don't have that structure anymore. Yeah, it's annoying, but at least it's a complacency that feels secure. And the moment that bell's gone, the moment that bell's not ringing anymore, we're on our own. And that's terrifying, but maybe equally terrifying, and that's been hard to accept too, is answering the question, what if it works out? What if I am enough on my own? Where do I go from there? And that's a really hard thing to want to get away from. To just feel like this was bad, but maybe it was good enough, or people will remember me at some point, or we were there for people. It's like, okay, and? That and is the roughest question. Where do we go from here? It's not secure. That's the hardest thing to make peace with.
I think I want to there's a lot to be afraid of. There's a lot to be pretty justifiably afraid of. There is a lot to pretty justifiably mourn. There is a lot of pretty justifiable anxiety over whether we exist. But I know that whether or not I am afraid, whether or not I am alone or surrounded, whether or not I am secure or drifting, whether or not I am better or worse than I used to be, I want to be me. And whatever that looks like is what I want. And I think the way that I want to make peace with all this is I want to get the wheel, and it's probably 2 a.m. And I want to get the wheel, and like I'm not even turning the fucking lights on, just moonlight in through the window, right? And I'm going to make the shittiest pot ever seen on Earth. I'm going to use all of my years of skill and experience to make the most raggedy, warped, unusable, awful to look at mess, such that it can barely be called a pot. I'm going to do it in one try. I'm going to fuck it up. I am going to fire it. And I'm going to put it on the shelf right next to that one we like a lot. And that is how we are going to get through this.
I just shivered.
Oh God! Oh, that's good. Just being like, that's it. Just looking at yourself in the mirror. I'm tired of you. I'm tired of your bullshit. We're gonna do this right now. It's like, what if we fuck it up? Of course we're gonna fuck it up. That's the point.
We're gonna use all of our skill. Like, this is not just a bad pot. This is the most technically bad pot you could make.
It's
like,
extremely competently made.
brought all of our skill to bear in making this horrid thing, and you can't stop it, and we can't stop ourselves.
So that is round 4, and fun fact: this is originally where I had the game end before I had previous iterations. When I had previous iteration of this, this kind of like where it could end at that kind of moment. But I decided to take the advice of a few other folks who play tested, and I added in this final section, which is called Scattering the Ashes. So this one is just, I think we can just alternate myself, then Quinn, then Tony. Or yeah, myself, Tony, Quinn, I think was the order we were actually doing.
Yeah.
Just reading through this and answering stuff or doing it as we go through it. So Scattering the Ashes. With all that may have come up throughout the course of play, you may be feeling a lot of heavy emotions. If you're anything like me, it can be hard to let go of those emotions right away. This section,
This section is devoted to giving you space to check in with yourself, get back to your body, and let it go of the weight you may be carrying.
The text is primarily adapted from Dark Jaguar's A Little Indulgence to Cheer You Up, Self-Compassion, which I highly recommend players to read in full.
Start with check-in and end with closing ceremony, so check-in.
Do a quick check-in with yourself. I'm going to read all 3 questions, and we'll go back and hit them each individually. How are you at this moment? Are you comfortable? How is your energy level? So check in with yourself on how are you at this moment. Explore whether or not you're comfortable. And then reflect on your energy level.
Okay. If folks feel good, move on to Quinn reading for Breathe.
Sometimes with stress and anxiety, our breathing becomes shallow and accelerated. It's a good idea to check in on how you're breathing if you're feeling a little out of it. Become aware of your breath. If it is fast and shallow, try to breathe gently and bring it back to a slower pace. Are you feeling tightness in your chest? It's okay. Breathe gently into those spaces and allow the tension to release if you can. If you are comfortable, gently place your hand on your belly or the middle of your chest or over your heart and feel the warmth of your hand. Take a few gentle breaths.
And then when you're ready with and done with that, indulgence. Take some time to be kind to yourself. Treat yourself to something that you know brings you joy. A few examples are things like get a cup of tea or your favorite drink and sit for a few minutes relishing the taste. Put on some music from your favorite band and sink into space for a while. Grab a piece of candy or your favorite snack and take a moment to savor the flavor. Acknowledge your body. Recognize what it needs to keep going and sink back into yourself slowly. If we want to give Quinn a second to go get that drink they mentioned before, go do that, because this seems appropriate. A moment to just let that be. This is about This is the treat yourself section of the game where you take everything you had,
Yourself.
take everything you dealt with, and then just start letting it go, releasing. Enjoy the beverage of your liking. I know for certain that I will be enjoying some dinner made by my partner who got home a little while ago.
Ooh, what are y'all eating?
I don't know. We had such a good dinner last night. I'm kind of excited to see what tonight is. We ordered Nepalese food yesterday,
Ooh.
which went really good. We had vegetable kofta, and I'm like, so good. It's one of my favorite types of food. But
when I was in Minneapolis Sunday night, I actually was very surprised by the quality of the Indian food I ordered on the extra night I spent in town because I volunteered to take a late flight. So it was surprisingly good. Not even just Minneapolis good, but like good.
I love a good Indian. Can't go wrong.
Yeah.
There's a place in SF in I think the Tenderloin district, like this one specific Pakistani Indian spot that is like that's my bar from like if I need to know a place is going to be good, I have to compare it to this place. If it matches the quality of that place, then I'm good. Especially because that was the first place I ever had a galub jamun, and if you know what that is, you know how delicious it is. Because I had never had it. I saw it on the menu. I ordered it, and it was like it cost $3, and they're like these little like syrup balls that are like this big, and I'm like, did I just get ripped off? Just $3 for this doesn't seem worth it. I start cutting into it with a knife, and it just oozes out syrup, and I'm like, oh yeah, this was money well spent.
Are y'all in/near Seattle proper?
Yes, I am.
You don't have to give me any more details than that. That's fine. Have you ever been to Mamiji's?
I don't even know what that is.
Mamiji's is our favorite sushi restaurant. So we lived in Seattle for 8.5 years before we moved to Philly. And Mamiji's is like the place we miss the most. After 10 p.m., they have like a late night happy hour. They have an earlier in the day happy hour also too. But their roll of the day is like $10, and they have a roll called the Moonraker. And so if you like sushi or sashimi, like Mamiji's is absolutely the best. It's down like in the city, and so we were up in Shoreline, and so but my wife would go there like almost weekly towards the end, but I would go there at least once a month with her also too. For late night sushi and drinks. It was excellent.
That sounds amazing. Tony, do you want to read the last section? Or do you want me to read the last section?
Is this closing ceremony?
Yes.
Give thanks for your kindness to yourself and return to the present. Take one more breath. Drink some water. And when you are ready, end the game. You have now finished playing a session of Flame in the Abyss. Congratulations, you did it. Thank you for taking risks and creating this story together.
And that is basically a whole session of Flame in the Abyss with, according to my time, about 2 hours for the session. So this is on the shorter end of when I've run one of these, but this is about how long I expected it to take because, yeah.
We're
all professionals, and that's our only identity, as we just learned in
I do. It is actually a really common saying of mine. When somebody like compliments me on something I've done for whatever reason, I go, I'm a professional.
Also, thank you to Love is Blue 3, or Love is Blue, because it's the third member or the fourth member of our stream in the chat, keeping it real, treating themselves to a refreshing Sprite at the moment. So,
but yeah, that is basically the whole of the game, both in its just general rounds, the structure, the roles, and the overall way of going through it all. Awesome. And yeah.
I want to. We do a little reaction roll thing, which we'll do in just 1 minute. But there are a lot of things. It's really funny. I only wrote things down when Quinn was saying things, which felt very good. As far like, I mean, I wrote down details and other stuff as we were all talking. But like, there are a number of things I wrote each section that Quinn said. I'm gonna read them because I like these are just from the first one, and I think I just started taking notes. But the first one was like, call it what it is. We're quitting, right? been here
Yeah.
for a minute, which I just loved and stood out to me. For the second one is we had no bounce, but this is the one where it really stood out. He's like, oh no, I'm taking notes about how Quinn is drawing these into resolution, like that I enjoy. It would have been a palette swap with less bureaucracy. Is such a solid line with
Oh
such a
God,
good like
yeah.
art
That would hurt.
art tones plus like absolutely. And this one is, I think, just such a good succinct wrap up of like where we're headed. Like, when was the last time we tried to have a relationship with someone who did not know us as a professional, right? That we were the person who did X or the blank person. Anyways, all very good. Let's do our reaction roll. Reaction roll is a live stream inside of a live stream. It's our chance to sit down with the creator of a game that we just played and talked about our experience playing that game. Today, we just played Flame in the Abyss, which is a game exploring loss and memory in a space where those things become reality. 3 players controlling one character and different aspects of who they are, trying to lead their way out of the abyss and make resolution with the loss that they've experienced. I had an absolute blast. Angela, thank you so much for being here with us, for creating this game, for inviting us to play it with you, and asking to come on stream, because I'm thrilled with the experience of play. And Quinn, thanks so much for being here to play it with me. Like I said, this is no slight against. We originally had a 4th player who couldn't make it at the last minute. This is no slight against them. I'm really glad this is the group it ended up being, because again, like, Quinn is somebody who I have played a lot with over the last year, a lot of different games. And I feel like we have a pretty decent grasp over each other's sensibilities, which I think lets us create a little bit more intimacy at the table. And so I was super excited that it ended up being this crew, even though I would have loved had we had all 4 also too. So very excited for that. But I don't want to do weird formal stuff. We're all here. Quinn, I'd love to hear any thoughts you have. I have thoughts also. Angela, if you have thoughts about our play of it or want to ask us questions, feel free to as well.
I am delighted to just fire away with questions, thoughts, feelings, reactions. This is the part of it that as a creator, I'm just like, I sit here like a little kid at like hearing from the outside of a candy store and being like, oh God, that's all going to be me. That's all going to be for me soon.
Also chat, whether live with us right now or later, Love is Blue specifically. If you have questions or comments, feel free, toss them out. Even something you already said, feel free, toss them back out again. Quinn, what thoughts?
Sure. Okay. First off, how dare you be so nice to me? Second, this guy fucking writes down quotes. This fucking guy, Jesus. Second, thank you for not doing the reaction roll spiel, because I was thinking about it earlier, and I'm like, if Tony does the reaction roll spiel after this kind of intimate, intense game, I'm going to
if there's a decompress at the end of a game, I don't ever. Sometimes I don't even switch into reaction roll. I'm just like, we're doing it. Like, we're not, we had enough of a pause there. Like, which actually I will say as a design note, like, it's cool to have a decompress that also draws resolution, like the closing ceremony where you're like, and now you are done, actually gives a lot of freedom to just move forward, which is actually just tremendous. Not just the debrief, but the actual like, and now we've tied off the bow, and now it is and now it is there, and it is set, and it is done, and we can step back.
It is cool to not a surprisingly few number of games have a point where they're like, the game is over now. And you not only said the game is over now, you also said do a little bit extra to make sure the game is really over. Is it over? Is it? Okay. Okay. What do I think about the game itself? Gorgeous. Like I said it before, it's kind of like it's kind of a go-to compliment for me. So let me get more specific. As a person, I have always enjoyed being, as I said, elbow deep in bad vibes. I love talking to people about this sort of thing. I love thinking about it. I was a theater major, so people having a bad time and kind of hanging out in those bad times is really something I've spent a lot of time doing, and had a lot of enjoyment with. And one thing that I love about TTRPGs is that it opens access to storytelling to people who are not writers. And making improvisation, giving people the tools and suggestions to allow for really meaningful stories to be told without ridiculous levels of experience is perhaps the main thing I value about the medium. And this is such a precise example of what I mean when I talk about these concepts, is that it is just this set of so crystal simple refractory rules that somebody with very little experience can really comprehend and embody. And maybe it was the music, maybe it's just the fact that, you know, it's a quiet nighttime thing and there's only 3 of us, but the atmosphere that descended upon this digital even table once we got started, absolutely insane that you could summon that up. Do you have any idea? I mean, of course you do, but it's so difficult to create that atmosphere of intimacy. That's something that feeling, that texture is something I'm not even trying to reproduce it, because I'm like, how could you reproduce that? And then, like, this game just does it. Like, you're talking about this stuff, you're feeling the stuff, the first person discussion, the first person, like, as feelings talking to each other, a person talking to themselves. It works on so many levels, and the strength of it, like we were talking about earlier, the song from the REM guy where he was like, this is about me, and then everyone was like, it's about everybody, like, it's about me too, and me, like, whatever, because the character and their problems are made up of the people playing. Everybody playing this game is going to be using it to work through their own stuff. They're going to be bringing their own stuff to the table, to the character. And so what that does, and I didn't think about it, but what that does is it creates emotional buy-in on a frankly illegal level.
That's the pull quote for the page right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it gets emotional buy-in on a frankly illegal level.
Because it's not even like you're like, oh, I'm interested in this. You're just working through your own feelings. But you're also telling a story. It is a beautiful, beautiful thing. Yeah, I mean, I could get further poetic, but I think my point has been made. Yeah.
If the question that's coming to mind from all that is like, how do you manage that, like, to get that, like, sort of buy-in or make it like that kind of accessible? If that's a question.
I had no question. I was just complimenting you.
I appreciate that as well. I will take that compliment.
Yeah. Do I have a question, Tony? If you've got anything, go.
No, I'll read. Love is Blue is in the chat, and I did Love is Blue. I did screenshot this so that it could live in perpetuity for Angela also too, and dropped it over on Discord. As I've said, I think this is quite the ride, and I would love to play this with some friends in order to process and decompress and move forward. After the years we've had with Bad Times TM, I think it's needed to have a game like this in order to have a safe space to delve into some of the bad stuff while having the space to be able to share that catharsis. Yes, I've trapped your words in forever. Well, I mean, once the internet's over, unless Angela prints out a print copy of what you said, it won't live forever.
I have a partner who makes zines. It'll be in print soon enough.
It's really funny. Like, I went first, and I've never seen an experience of play. So there's always that, like, I mean, as the Frayed, right? I went first. And so, and any method of play is valid, I would say, as long as you're following the intent of the game. Otherwise, play a different game. Like the question of like, okay, do I just start like, and it's really interesting, Sam, you were like the theater person to me. I was like, oh, like I'm 100% as I start this rant about John's toast at the Thanksgiving party. I am actor on stage giving monologue in a spotlit in the most neutral theater outfit ever,
Totally.
with the audience and the sound of the audience in the distance, with no other reality, right? Like that's the mental space I was in, was the weird rambling monologue space that you find yourself in. And it's like, but it was still like, even as I did it, I was like, man, I hope this is the way this game is played, because you never know how other players are going to engage. Like if they're going to engage conversationally, if they're going to be like, well, I think the Frayed would be thinking this, like talking about it in third person.
Right.
And again, all those things are valid choices. I do really love the space we ended up in as just conversational embodiment of the voices and of the Vox Mentalis aspects of Anders, right? Of just the voices that swirl around in your head talking to each other. And so again, whether and Angela, you are welcome to divulge how you've seen people play or not. But like for me, it felt supernatural to do it that way, and know like I wouldn't have to worry about either of y'all matching energy particularly. But I also know that especially if you're talking about stuff that's very personal, you might need a little bit of that distance, right, to play with.
So interestingly enough, that sort of like jumping into like that long thread of like just going in on like this fucked up situation, this job, this asshole over here with this terrible food. I don't even know what that substance is over there. The thing that I loved about that was the fact that like I've been I still remember as a kid probably having dragged my mom to like a parent teacher like open house kind of night where there were like snacks and stuff, where there was like the terrible like store bought, well, because we don't pay teachers enough. Right. Hot take, we don't pay teachers enough. I mean, we don't. Y'all can fight me on that.
Don't hurt yourself on that edge there, Angela.
So for me, what I've seen in a lot of people going into this is that they do kind of, I think at least initially start doing the, I guess what you call the initiative order style or approach to like taking their turn and stuff. Because like I mainly said like, oh, this person goes first, this person goes second, this person goes third, just to give a rough framework for how like the tone and emotional like journey is supposed to go in each round, to give you like a framework. But I like treating, at least for this game, the hope was to kind of go more of a blues or a jam session approach. Because the thing that I've always loved about jam sessions and blues is that you have one person over there who's like, I got the chords, or I got the main riff. Everyone else, do whatever you want. I got us down. Or you have the drummers just keeping the beat, or you have like the bass and the drummers synced up. Like you have the rhythm section that's just like, the foundation of this is set. That's the framework I wanted to give folk. But during my initial playtest, the dialogue component was not as emphasized as much as I put it in the final one. That actually came out through a pair of folks who were playtesting it, who just started talking with one another because that felt natural to them. And I was like, oh, it was supposed to be more of an order of Frayed goes, then the Miss goes, and then they respond, and then the flame will build off of that. But it seemed more natural in both an actual play and the way that people just sunk into the game space, to have it be more of a like, let them dialogue back and forth, because one, that gives the flame more material to work off of, but two, it doesn't feel like that awkwardness that comes with kind of initiative-based approaches to games, where it's like, I did my thing. It's like, did you think about it in relation to everyone else? No. I just kind of did that thing.
I had already mentally prepared it and didn't expect to have to respond back. No, I did not. No, I liked it. And it also felt very much like the internal conversation. Like on our best days, I think we start off with, man, I really just love this thing about this person. And there are probably people who live in that space. But I think for most of us, like here's something that's bothering me tends to be at the forefront. Then we kind of come back with, yeah, but you know what? Like, here are the good points. And then eventually, like, our brain kicks in and is like, yeah, but here's what we actually think, period. Like, da-da-da. And so, like, the flow felt not only narratively satisfying, good, like all the excellent design aspects of it. It felt very much like, this is how my brain works a lot of the time. And like I said, sometimes it might flip where one is in front of the other, but I think narratively that's where the sensibility of the conflict and the negatives are easier to respond to than the positives to take necessarily like try to take the legs out of.
And that was intentional for me because a lot of what stood out to me as someone who was dealing with both my mother's loss and also someone who's a survivor of assault and like other traumatic things, the thing that's often so striking about the imprint of those experiences in the body and in the mind is that sense of like sometimes I'll think about someone who harmed me and I'll be like, well, maybe it wasn't that bad, or like maybe there's some elements of it. And then there's other days where I'll look back and I'm like, I fucking hate this person. I hate them so much. I wish them an early grave. I wish them every terrible thing in the world. And then there's also some moments where I've made peace with some of the things that have happened to me or have seen happen to friends, like that I have no control over, that I can't do anything about. That there's either I can stay mad or upset about this, or I can just try and work with what is going to let me move on. And not because I don't care about it or I don't still think about it, but what makes my life livable? And because that's a question for me ethically that I think about a lot, is what makes a life livable. And there's that sense for me of approaching grief that felt like I wanted to intentionally make this game have that kind of element to it. That sense of conflicting tension about how we think about the same event. And part of the reason I added in the element of like, you shouldn't really care about whether or not this is quote unquote true, because after a certain point for how we think about grief or a lot of our losses, you might go back to that event that you've been angry about for like 15 years. You talk to a friend, they're like, he was wearing a red shirt.
That's not what happened. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like that's not what happened. It's like I remember this. I was mad for weeks. Yeah, we know. And he did do this bad thing, but it wasn't here. It wasn't this bad. It was still pretty bad, but it wasn't this. And that's the thing that I wanted to have be present, that sense of like I didn't want people to feel like, well, what actually happened? What's the truth of this? The truth, ultimately, to our emotions doesn't really matter that much.
Yeah.
Like, it's not
Yeah.
actually around grief and loss. That's like the last thing we care about. Like, around some really traumatic things, we might be like, I need to know what happened. And that's important. I'm not denying that. But especially for grief, when it comes to loss, there is that sense of like, this hit me. This hit, and it's staying here. It's nested within my body in this place, and I need to dig that out. And it's like, but that didn't really happen. It doesn't matter. That doesn't mean there's not seeds of that loss and that pain throughout my body that I need to excavate before they start like growing into more painful things that will just spread all over and make me a miserable person in and out.
Did it start as a 3-player RPG?
Yes, it did. It did actually start as a 3-person because the Final Fantasy XIV influence of it was actually coming from this, because the whole genesis of this, and I have like a devlog Twitter thread series where I share a lot of my insights in building the game. I was sick and dealing with a lot of stomach and body pains that I deal with a lot. Like when I say that this game is a very disabled approach from a very disabled angle, it's a lot of because of that I have periods of dissociation, I have depressive periods, I have suicidality, I have a lot of different mental health problems and body pains resulting from that. So I literally had a period where I was like, you know what? I really liked this Job Quest series from this game. Like you go on one of those threads where you're like, I'm gonna go watch a thing that made me feel good, or I was like, when I lose faith in the world, I'm gonna watch that and remember people make some really beautiful art. And I found a video series of a YouTuber, I think her name was like Yisa Yao, just approach. She'd never gone through this section of the game. She did the Dark Knight quest line, and I was like, oh my God, there's so much stuff in here, not just about grief, but just like that are just beautifully written. And the name of the roles are literally taken from the game. There is a character named Frey, there is a character named Mist, and the flame in the abyss is a concept in the storyline that is never actually fully explained per se what it is. It's just referred to as the source of a Dark Knight's power. And I liked that imagery of fire and darkness, not because darkness was painful, because I personally really dislike the way we often use imagery to equal white and light is good, black, darkness is bad. It's more that it's that sense of space and tightening and cold. And I wanted to do something that reflected more like, no, I'm not asking you to stop looking at the pain. You have to be in that pain. I'm asking you to not deny what it is and sit with it.
Yeah.
Don't dwell in it. Don't make your life in it. Don't make the whole of your character in it, because Lord knows we all three of us have probably played with that person who's made their character have that backstory. It's sit with it, then let it be.
The fun thing is, like, every once in a while I'll read spiritual text written in like 1800s, 1940s, or even further back, and the concept of abyss really just means an endless, right? Like, and really an endless, not an endless space, not like it's a, you can have an abyssal amount of anything, or an abyss of anything. And so, but I do love the way you created that feeling of, yeah, this is vast, empty, and it's only you and your memories here, as the play space, right? Embracing it in a very solid reality, or very solidly and impactful way. Yeah, like I left a profession that I've been in for 20 years 2.5 years ago, and one of the most interesting things, and it's one of the reasons why one of the things Quinn said did, and it has mattered to me specifically to be like, I was a professional X, and a lot of it was community management for such a long period of time, that you think you have relationships with people that are actually just professional engagements from one direction or the other. And you might assume it's a real relationship. And in their mind, like, as soon as you're not in that position anymore, like, that's the only reason that they hung out with you or knew you. And not in a mean way, like, not in a cruel way, not in a way where they're like, hey, I was using you, right? But in a way that is, when you assume a relationship is real and that person's only engaging in it from a professional context or a convenience context, the fallout from that in the most non-consequential ways of just lack of care and concern once you've left that type of position, especially as you step out of an industry, which is what I did, is like crippling. Sometimes just be like, oh, so no one cared, like, about me separately from my position within this industry. And that's not, intellectually, that's not how I feel. Emotionally, there's a lot of time where that's how I feel. But I would say in the RPG space, we 100% experience the same realities in any professional, especially creative or community-oriented spaces. We experience the same thing, right?
Yeah, definitely. A couple of things. One, real quick, going back to what you were saying, Angela. Talking about how, like, you want to look at the darkness, but that's not everything there is. Going through that, and I think what I really like about this game is that it teaches, honestly, it models a healthy structure of internal holistic analysis of your emotions, of your life, and how to move on, right? It's a very nuanced thing about having conversations about the truth with yourself and finding what you could also call a truth beyond the truth, right? Because like, the physical reality doesn't always matter, but sometimes it does, and then how you feel is more important, and sometimes it's not. And this game exists in this space of nuance. I think that I think that even if you're not familiar with approaching emotions in this way, this game is going to do a good job of priming you, of exposing you to that way of thinking about your feelings, of thinking about your life. Well, I just think that's an immensely valuable thing for a game to do. And it's immensely cool that that's what this game does. And that's what it pulls off. I mean, it's one thing for a game to do it. It's another thing for a game to pull it off. And And my God, it's pulled off like stickers from a brand new set of sneakers or something. I don't know. I kind of lost it. Like I was going for like the rip-off concept. You know what I mean? You feel that's the kind of imagery I was going for. And second thing, the thing that I was pulling from was when I dropped out of college, because I went to college for theater, and I had a pretty good time until I didn't. And I did get a card. But like, I dropped out of college 2 weeks before the end of the spring semester. I was this close to finishing my sophomore year. I was in the middle of directing a play. The play got canceled because I dropped out a week before show week, right? So I'm pretty familiar with leaving a place where I thought I had a place for myself, where I at least hoped I had a community. And I knew when I was there that I was like, I don't really know if this community and I have a lot to do with each other. And that was pretty confirmed after I left. So just like Tony, it was something that I cared about a lot. I had done for a long time, and I had tried to make friends. And for whatever reason, like it's slightly different because it's not exactly a professional. Lord knows it wasn't professional circumstance, but definitely that feeling of hoping that you've made a community and no, you didn't. And honestly, like that's what keeps me from going back to theater, is not just how busy I am, but how much I'm like, man, those theater people just didn't like me very much, and I didn't like them very much. And I don't like, is it going to be the same if I go back?
Look, Quinn, if I've learned anything tonight, it's that what you got to do is produce the worst technically possible play that you could possibly produce.
Exactly.
Craft the worst show that you could possibly create. Make sure you invite people who are incredibly passionate to do this with you, though.
Yeah.
And so
that could be fun. That could be. I don't know. Anyway, so that's what I was bringing. That's what I was bringing to the game tonight.
Well, in difference in the fact that,
if you wanted to know what I've been through,
Angela, in difference to the fact that you have dinner happening soon, the wildly different time zones, everything else like that. If you want to share with us what you were working through tonight, happy to hear it also too. But most importantly, I want to make sure we get a chance for you to tell people when this game is coming out and the best way to stay connected about it too.
Okay. In terms of stuff I was pulling from, it was a lot of post-college experience of being about like 22, 23, being homeless for almost a year, and being like, aren't there supposed to be people who didn't we make connections in this college space? Because I was coming from like a student organizing space as well, and there's a lot of cliquishness that comes up within those spaces, as the case in both any industry and any like social space, but also in organizing too. There's a lot of like turmoil that happens for a lot of justified reasons, and then also a lot of very petty reasons. So there was a lot of that sense of like that, and the sense of, for me, like when I look back on the past 7 years, I've built up over time a significant amount of like writing credits and pieces that I'm proud of. And on my Patreon, I have about 230 poems that are on there that I wrote about like 75 of them in a year, which was one of those things where I was like, I don't know how I did this, but I'm proud of me. And also, what the fuck? Why did you do this? But in terms of really this game, it just felt like a lot of playing off that sense of like both of you have touched upon that profession, that sense of I'm a professional, I do this thing, or like I produce this work, I am what I make, right? That's the whole gist of this, right? Like someone has to pay attention. Once they do, it's going to fill not only the hole, but also remind me that I'm still here, right? And it's one of those things that I've had to face constantly with my partner, reminding me like, hun, folks care about you just because you're you. That's it, one. And two, you have to be enough for you. No matter what, you have to always be enough for you. That doesn't mean you have to be alone when you need reminders that you are enough for yourself. Other folk can do that for you. You don't have to carry the weight by yourself, but not every weight can be someone else's to take for you. Some of it you got to deal with yourself. So that was a lot of what I was dealing with. In terms of this particular game, so I have plans for, as of now, April 5th. So not this next week, but the week after that, to release this, hopefully through Itch and through funding there. I have a friend, my friend Jess Meyer, who's a fantastic, lovely being and a person for whom I have an infinite well of thanks and gratitude for helping me build this game out into something more. Like, they're half the reason I even reached out to Tony and a bunch of other folks to do interviews that are happening even this Sunday and maybe even next week as well. And I will even be having a chat with Spencer Campbell soon for his coffee breaks. Not this weekend, but next weekend is the weekend leading up to it, because Spencer's a good bean. And I'm also, according to my partner, the most prolific Slayers RPG maker outside of Spencer himself, which
maybe more than Spencer himself at this point. I'll be honest with you.
20. I mean,
it's me sitting there and I'm like, hey, Spencer, do you have a document?
Spencer wrote like 4 or 5 classes and just collected a bunch of other people's work together. I mean, you know.
Yeah, but the problem is he wrote The Tactician, which is the most broken book that anyone's ever come up with.
True.
Everything that class does is absurd, and I love it. And it's the definition of, hey, you know that support player you made fun of? Guess what? We're the best ones now, and you can say nothing. But in terms of, it will be through my itch, which is Voice of the Phoenix, or I believe it's Tony has it already put in the chat,
right below my face.
Screen. Yes, yeah. Yes, it's right below Tony's face. But it's going to be there, or if you want to look up Voice of the Phoenix, where currently I have chat books. I have one chat book inspired by the Slayer's Almanac book that was dedicated to all 10 of the writers, including myself. One poem for each district there. I have the 20 playbooks, and this game will likely have its own page curated through there as well, but will be funded. The launch for it will be April 5th currently. If any updates change, Tony will probably be among one of the first people to know. But yeah, I am on there. I am on Patreon and Philosophem. I am on Twitter at Phoenix24Fem, where I share about other game designer folks who are involved with things like the Trans Bundle fundraiser, a bunch of the other ones in support of folks in the Ukraine. Like, I'm involved in here and there and everywhere, and I'm also occasionally involved with folks over at Utopia with things, and Utopia is an all BIPOC focused space that does shows that are entirely like BIPOC cast, BIPOC DGMs and such, and a bunch of amazing designers have come out of there as well, have fundraised out of there, and I have nothing but deep well of thanks for them as well. But yeah, Voice of the Phoenix, itch.io, April 5th. I'll have the link and everything up probably by then. I'm even talking to a friend on Sunday about getting that all up.
Awesome. Really love being able to share the music with people tonight also, too.
Yeah.
It was a tremendous experience that helped set the tone tremendously. I always love do stuff like that. I can't wait to share the game. I'll have some thoughts coming out in a polished review over the course of the next couple of weeks shortly after launch for the project. I'm very much looking forward to sharing them. I'm trying to be better about raids because I like to support other Twitch creators. I
am thankful that both of you like that piece of music. That piece of music took me 12 hours
very good,
to record and write and edit and everything.
We are going to raid Weave the Tale. I don't know what they're playing, but I super enjoy any chance I get to collaborate with them. So if you like emerging RPGs, indie creators, other stuff like that, stick around. We're going to hop over there. Also, if you like all those things, feel free to hit follow on the channel or to subscribe, which I always forget to say because we just started doing it. But we're trying to build up other voices on the channel. We have a new solo reviewer who's come on. We're trying to do short series. We'd love to be able to pay people who are committing more time to helping things happen on channel. So all the subscription income goes to helping support other people, not our core team. We have other ways we support those folks, but would love any support that y'all have. You can find all of our games and links down below. Tomorrow I'm going to be on Murder and Coffee over on TPK Roleplay with Sarah and Lula Bach. And I am. We don't have anything happening until next week. Oh, no, wait. Next Wednesday, we have Dethroners. And then next weekend, we've got an actual play of Troika and some other great stuff from Exalted Funeral happening. I am very excited about all those great things. I do want to shout out that one of the games we're going to be playing for Troika is Evie Lockhart's new game. Evie is a phenomenal creator who we can't ever get to run things because she does not have consistent access to internet. If you can help support Evie and her family, I would highly, highly, highly encourage you to. They could absolutely use it. They've got a Kickstarter that's live right now, or go support their projects. But I'm going to hit the start raid thing because I never remember how exactly this works. And then we're going to wave at the screen in just a second once I know. It's going to happen in 8 seconds. But until next time, everybody, thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.